Good afternoon. My name is Mike Bayo, here with Lisa Hutt, and today we're going to be going over the Get in the Flow, understanding the basics of Sage 300 CRE system flow. Um, what we're going to do here today, agenda-wise, is we're going to go through an overview of the data flow and how the system flows visually through, so you'll be able to get a good idea of what modules and where. We're going to discuss file structure. We're going to go through and do some posting and interface options, and we'll go and discuss some issues that can come up and some tips on how to handle that. Then we're going to jump over to Lisa, and we're going to go through her closing workflow. From there, we're going to go through and work on some data files that have had some rejections as far as posting goes, and go through on how to troubleshoot and correct that as well. You'll also be able to ask any questions in the chat, and those will be sent over to us during the end. As far as the data flow goes within the Sage 300 CRE system, you have modules, and within your modules, basically, you have what I like to call your two centers of the universe, the two modules where most of the information is going to flow into from somewhere else in the system, and that is general ledger and job cost. So the diagram here is going to reflect that this is going to be the center of how things flow. And you will notice an arrow where, if you enter miscellaneous costs into job costs, they can flow into general ledger as well. And then on top of that, you have what we would consider your core modules, which would be your data entry points. So for example, cash management, if you were going to make a miscellaneous bank charge entry into the system is going to take that entry and flow it into the general ledger. One thing to notice here is that if information is entered, if a journal entry is entered into general ledger for the cash account, it will not go to cash management. So basically, if you are making entries into the cash account, they need to either happen through the normal course of the modules as far as accounts payable, accounts receivable, or from cash management into general ledger. Now what happens is when an entry is being made, for example, in accounts payable, let's take a accounts payable invoice, for example. When the invoice is posted or finished in the system, it's going to create transactions, and those transactions go multiple places. So it'll make a posting entry to the general ledger. It will possibly send a job cost entry over into job cost if it's been coded to a project. And if it's a check or an EFT payment or some form of payment of that payables, it's going to make an entry into the cash management system. So in reality, it's possibly making up to 3 separate entries at the same time. And as you're going to see during this demonstration, there's multiple places where these entries can get stopped for various reasons. So it's important to know the data flow and to where to look when those items happen. And the same goes for accounts receivable side. Now, some of you enter directly into accounts receivable. Others might have the billing and contract module. So the more modules you have, the more complexity these postings and the data flow is going to be in the system. So for example, contracts, if you actually go in and set up a contract in the system, let's say for a schedule value progress billing contract, it's going to send schedule value transactions over to job costs to update the contract amounts on that project. Also in contracts, it's going to send that information over to billing so that it can be generated. A bill can be generated for that with the progress billing. You can also do quick bill in billing, and T&M progress billing, T&M cost billings as well, are all going to originate out of that billing module. So when you're actually generating an invoice, in the billing, whether it's quick bill, contract-based, cost-based invoice, it's going to originate from the billing module. And when you post that invoice in the billing module, what it's going to do is send a transaction into accounts receivable. Notice here, it's not sending it anywhere else from billing. So this is another potential where, a lot of clients, well, I posted it in billing. Why isn't it showing up in these other areas? And most likely it's something to do with the accounts receivable posting that didn't flow through. What happens is accounts receivable acts as that gatekeeper. And once it flows through accounts receivable, you can see here, there's a possibility of many transactions throughout the system. So accounts receivable, if it's an invoice, it's going to generate a general ledger transaction, a job cost transaction for the revenue side, and it's going to populate back the bill to date for the contract as well. And then if it's a cash receipt or, customer payment, it's going to post that entry over to cash management. So you can see as this chart gets bigger and as these modules, get implemented, data is going in various places. And, one of the things to make note of is how this data flows through the system. And the more you can learn this flow of data, the easier it's going to be to troubleshoot where and why is it not updating into your totals or posting in places that it should be posting to. Now, there's other modules in the system. We're not going to touch on all of them, but for example, payroll would add another complexity, even possibly if they were using the equipment costing module. But if I add payroll into the mix, now we're posting transactions again, more arrows into general ledger and job cost and cash management, and possibly over to equipment cost. So, and there's various other modules, again, that you may have that I'm not listing on this chart, but hopefully you get the idea of how the data flows visually through the system. And we can make this chart available to everybody as well, because it's just a nice little tool to have handy, just to kind of help yourself flow through the system. As far as the types of data that's going to flow in the system, it's very important to consider that as well. We have two types of data. We have what is known as master files and what is known as transaction files. So again, your master files are going to be things like your vendor lists, your customers, your jobs, your bank accounts, your GL accounts. And then basically what's going to happen here is we are going to store totals. We are going to store and possibly be able to retrieve job to date totals, opening balances, year to date totals. Not going to be able to, do any date sensitive reporting here, but this is going to store and update totals as transactions post throughout the system. As far as transactions go, these are going to store the details, the entry lines of all the data that's being flowed through the system in Sage. And within the transaction files, there's going to be three types of files. And this becomes the real critical part in the system to understand these types of files and what they do and what they mean. So we have three types of files. We have a new, a current, and a history file. And what those files pertain is, for example, the new file. A new transaction file is a file that has not been posted yet in that module. So if you are looking in a general ledger and you are looking in the new transaction file for the general ledger, that transaction has not been posted through the system yet, and it is not part of the master file totals. So in the example that I just said is basically it would not be in the general ledger account total. So if you're going to run a trial balance or compare it to a subsidiary ledger, it might be posted in accounts payable and part of the open aging, but it's not posted through in the general ledger. So that's important to kind of be able to take a look at these new files, and we'll get into that in more detail a little bit later. But basically, a new file is an unposted file. And it does go by various other names throughout the system. If you're in billing, you might have noticed unbilled and billed. Unbilled is basically a new file, that basically an unposted file. In accounts payable, a lot of the reports that you run, you may get prompted for AP invoice and AP master, and no naming of the new file whatsoever. But whenever you see that in accounts payable, AP invoice, you would select that. And then in some cases, it'll then ask you new or history. In this case that we're showing on the screen here, there's only a new file, so you can select the new. So, when you're in these modules, the concept is new, which is unposted, but it may have a different terminology in the area that you're in. So just be aware of that. As far as the current transaction file, these are transactions that have been posted. These are included in the master file totals. This is, basically the guts of the system. These transactions should equal what your totals are in the system. And this is ultimately where we want our transactions to end up, is in the current transaction file. So there's a general ledger current transaction file, accounts payable current transaction file, job cost, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so those are in the master file and they're part of the totals. The third type is the history file. The history file is basically any transaction, and I should say any posted transaction that has been moved from current. So basically, it's the current transaction, but at some point, your system, you can archive some of that data and split that file off in two, so that you can, when you're inquiring or when you're running reports off the current file, it's not having to filter through 10 years of transactions in payroll. You can archive those transactions over to the history file. That is not going to happen automatically. Basically, there's going to be a process at the end of the year or whenever your company likes to do that, but basically where you can archive transactions, and it can be module specific. So look for another class on that as well. But basically current and history, a lot of times clients, if they're running some reports, they may run those at select both of these files together, the current and the history, depending on what type of information you're trying to get out of the system. Next topic is post and interface settings. So how do these transactions flow through the system? How do they get posted? Is it automatic? Is it manual? Is it going through billing before it goes over to here? That's all going to be stored in what's called the post and interface settings in the system. They're typically located in each module. And they're located, most of the time you can find them in your menu under File, Company Settings, and then it'll say AP settings or billing settings or job cost settings. Now, security-wise, you may find that you go in and look for this and you don't have access to that. If that's the case, I would talk to your admins and make sure that you have access to that, if that is something that you wanted to go in and take a look at, and that was something that you should have access to. But it's typically located in those settings areas, and it basically determines how the current module that you're in, is going to interface with other modules and how it's going to post. Okay, so basically how that diagram is going to move throughout the system and what's going to stop it and what's not. Typically within those settings, you're going to have an interface where, for example, accounts payable is going to go to general ledger, but then you're going to have a posting option. Is it a manual post versus an automatic? Do I have to say post entries before it goes somewhere, or post invoice before it goes somewhere? Or when I click finish, do I want it to automatically update in the other area? So that's something to consider too when we get into trying to figure out why things aren't moving throughout the system. So this is one big area where it can determine if a transaction is staying in the new file or not. If it's on manual, well, guess what? All your transactions are staying in the new file until you manually click post. Okay. Here's some examples of that. So post interface settings examples. I have accounts receivable settings up here. So you can see here that in accounts receivable, when I put in let's say a customer payment, for example, when I click finish, what do I want to happen? Do I want it to automatically update in accounts receivable? And then from there, do I want it to automatically send that transaction over to cash management, over to general ledger, over to job cost, wherever else it might need to go? And when I do that, do I want it to automatically update that module too? So sometimes you might have it on automatic here in accounts receivable, but when it goes over to general ledger, it's on manual and somebody has to manually post it over there. So this is definitely one of the first areas to dive into when things aren't posting, is to make sure this is set up correctly, because it could be as simple as, oh, somebody checked it off on manual, it's got to be automatic. Okay. So, they all look pretty similar. The modules themselves will change as far as how they integrate and what they integrate with. And that goes back to that chart a little bit too. Same thing for accounts payable here. Payable can go to billing, cash management, equipment cost, general ledger, depending on the modules that you own. Okay. So that, and every module has that. Billing is going to have that. Contracts is going to have that. Cash management is going to have that. The only one I believe that really doesn't have that is the general ledger, because that doesn't go anywhere. So just taking this back to our chart, I have the accounts receivable posting settings up here, and you can kind of see, accounts receivable, this is our accounts receivable. And now, to cash management, there's our arrow. So how is that arrow happening? It's automatically going. Contracts automatically, general ledger automatically, and job costs, so forth. So just to bring that back, you can kind of see how these simple arrows, basically if AR to GL was on manual, that would stop there. So in accounts receivable, it would be in the current file in accounts receivable, but it would be in the new file in general ledger. Okay. So besides the post and interface settings, there's other reasons why files don't flow through or get stopped when they go through the system. We've listed some of these reasons out here. Basically, reasons why files can either get rejected or stuck in what I call stuck in the new file. So rejected is a strong word. When you see printouts and things like that where it says the file was rejected, counting period closed, it doesn't mean it was blown up. It's there. It's just sitting in that new file waiting to be processed still. Okay. So, we talked about this already. Some of the reasons, well, manual settings in your post and interface could be leaving that in the new file. Most common reason, the period's closed. That month is closed, or it's too far into the future. Counting date-wise, module date-wise. Lisa's going to get into that a little bit more detail in a sec. But basically, it's some kind of closed period that's preventing it. There are cases where it will not post if the system is out of balance for some reason. The general ledger entry is out of balance. Maybe if you have a prefix by company, it'll reject it there and make you correct that entry. Another area, especially an area where people believe they're automatic, and in reality the system just doesn't do it automatically, would be when you're doing some editing, when you're changing entries. One of the most common places is when you're changing accounts payable invoices. Sometimes, when you're making a change to an accounts payable invoice and you're coding it to a different GL account or a different job, there's some functions built in there that the system is automatically going to keep it in new, just so someone else can take a look at it before it posts in. So whenever you're making changes to entries from those originating modules, just go through and make sure that those new files have posted all the way through the system. There has been other cases where in the middle of the post, just happened to where the system froze up or the power went out or some kind of external process happened that caused that transaction file to be out of balance, and that would might cause something where we have to dig into support or use somebody else to come in and actually fix some of that. But we're going to suggest some things to stay on top of this. And number one thing is to check your new files. Before you go to run a report or a financial statement or a job cost report, go in and run some reports that are off of transactions, that are off of the new files. Basically, in theory, you should never have anything in your new file. And if you get a message that says nothing to print when you're printing off a new file, that's a good message. So, stay on top of that. Check those new files, especially before you go to run a report or before you go to make edits on something that you're trying to fix because you think it's wrong. Another thing is we've seen people where they're going in making adjusting entries, and in reality, all they had to do was fix why something's not posting, and then the transaction would flow into the system. So check those new files. And we'll go into about, give you some examples of some inquiries that you can run. We'll give you some examples of those in next session after Lisa's. And, there's other things. If you have My Assistant, that's a great tool to set up some automatic alerts where you have files in the new file. I've had people where they've run them weekly or every Monday they'll get an email saying, yeah, you have 3 transactions in the new file. It's just a reminder to go check it. Okay. So basically what we're going to do now is hand it over to Lisa, and she's going to go through what we're calling the closing workflow, and that's in quotes because you'll get a better flavor for what closing really means in Sage next.
All right, thanks, Mike. So what I'm going to be covering is a proper, if you want to call it, close checklist for construction companies. Kind of a best practice on how to close modules and in what order to do them. Depending on your company and your processes, your people structure and such, obviously some of this might need to change, but this works for a majority of construction companies. So if you think about transaction cycles, the payroll and accounts payable transaction cycles are generally the ones that a company will close down first in their month end. So if you're a time and material contractor, you need to cut off your accounts payable so that you can bill those costs. So generally what you want to do in Sage is you want to close, which we'll do that. We'll go over that in a second. Close payroll and accounts payable first. So Sage uses the term close very loosely, and what it means in most modules, except for general ledger, is that I am rolling the period in my module to the next month. So my reports that say current month will then go to the next month. So it really does not stop transactions from posting in the modules. General ledger batches are the only module that truly will stop a posting for a GL entry from happening. So in order to use Sage as kind of a control procedure to cue you when something is not supposed to post to a period, you have to look at the GL module. Okay, so that's kind of what Mike was referring to with the true close in Sage isn't, it's a roll forward. So for payroll, let's jump into each module here. We'll go through the close process and what it does in the modules and how you do it. And we will, I believe we will be able to post these into the live stream, or these resources could be available if you reach out to us. So the payroll module, we will have a process in most modules where you're going to post an entry or post something. So post checks, post invoices, post entries. So for payroll, it's going to be the task menu, and you're going to post checks. So that's just what they call it in this specific module. So posting entries, posting checks, same thing. So you want to make sure that all of these are post through. So the easiest way to do that is when you run the specific task and you get your printout or your posting journal, you just want to review that posting journal to ensure everything posted and to not reject. There are inquiries in modules as well that you can pull up, which there's some more examples on these other tabs to check that there's nothing stuck in the new file or unposted, okay? So in payroll, the easiest way though for payroll is to review the posting journal, okay? I would suggest that versus an inquiry. If everything posted through, your posting journals don't show anything rejected, then you can come here and you can close the month in the payroll module under the same menu, okay? Most people think they're done with payroll before they really are done with payroll. You'll have a check come in at the end of the month, a special check that needs cut. So try not to close your month until the last day of the month hits. But again, if you have a different process for your company, you might adjust that. Closing the month, as a reminder, in here does not stop entries from posting through to the payroll module. And when, like Mike was showing, when you initiate a transaction in a module, it will post another one in GL, for example, in job cost. So these will not, this close month process here will not stop that. You will find that in the general ledger module if it gets hung up in there in the new file. Okay, so just high alert right there. All right, so that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple in most modules to close the period down. It's post entries, close month. Okay, so for accounts payable, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do tasks, post invoices. So it's under the task menu here. Then an easy way to check that everything posted, again, review the posting journal, easiest way. Second easiest way is to use an inquiry. We're showing accounts payable inquiry because it's a little different than other ones. So you're going to use this invoices by batch, for example. You're going to pick the invoice selection here, and then it cues you to pick the new file. Most modules don't do this part. It just cues you to pick the new file right out of the gate. This one does not. So you have to have this step in between, okay? So once you click the new file, you want to verify that it doesn't have any batches. This specific example, I put some in there so they would catch. There are some batches that are stuck in the new file, okay? So the purchasing module created some invoices and they didn't get posted yet. So someone didn't run the post invoices task and they were still there. So in order to research them, easiest thing to do is to go back up and post it, see if they post through. And if they don't, the printout gives you some detail of why. Posting period closed, and there's something that it'll cue you with. There are many reasons why things don't post, but the easiest way is to review the posting journal. If you get stuck, that's why we're here, to reach out and help you troubleshoot some of that, okay? So once you go back, review that posting journal, everything posted, no rejections, then you could come down here and close the month, okay? So, in accounts payable, we do not close the month. So there's no procedure in here to do that. So AP is where you can get a little, easy to post an AP invoice or AP bill through to your other modules. So If you backdate or future date bills in accounts payable, that is the most common thing that happens. Someone just accidentally types a wrong date. There are different scenarios that you can do to fix it. And so I've listed those here. If you have your period closed in GL, you can go back and open it reverse, for example. You could also just post it through if you haven't closed general ledger yet. Beyond that, if you have to wipe out the entire thing, there's another step. Again, accounts payable, this happens quite frequently. That's the only reason I'm diving into this here. If you get into this step, go ahead and give us a call because we will help you through that. It's something you'll want a consultant to help you on. Okay. So once you close the month, or once you run and make sure all batches are posted, you're kind of done in here. Okay. Okay. So the next module I would then close down. Let's say your month-end close process is you shut down AP and payroll, and you make sure everything in job cost is posted. So your project managers will review their job cost reports. They'll spit out some stuff for billing, and they'll start generating billing. Okay. So let's say that's your typical process. It's what a lot of companies do. Then you're going to come into job costs and do the same exercise. You're going to post your entries. You're going to review the posting journal, make sure that all of the entries are posted. And then depending on how you set up your job cost module, some people use weeks. I haven't seen that frequently, but you would need to close week and close month. But most people, you just do tasks close month. Okay. So again, this will not stop job cost entries from posting to a month that you close down here in job cost module. Okay. So someone could backdate a direct cost entry and it could slip through. Okay. So until you close the period down in GL, people can still affect your job cost reports on accident. So just a warning there on that again. Okay. Billing and contract module, they're kind of two that are tied together. And so what I generally recommend is doing posting of everything in the contract module first, and then the billing module second. So the contract module, it's just called post in here, but you just want to come up here to tasks post and start the process. Verify your posting journal has no rejected entries. Okay. That's as simple as it is. Task close month, right here is what you do to close the month in contract module. Okay. So contract module really doesn't have any entries per se, but it rolls the contracts forward to the next month. So you can do billings on them. So that's about all that means in the contract module. The billings module, then you want to go into there. You want to post all your invoices, review the posting journal, and make sure everything's posted that you want. Some things people do start billing, and they might keep that billing open till next month. So as long as all of the invoices are posted that you want to post, then you're done. So this is an easy way to check that your invoices that you want to post have posted. So you can use this inquiry here, the all invoices inquiry, to check that status over here. Okay. So if something's in here and you don't think it should be, then you need to go through your billing process again. Okay. But you can see, for example, this one's on hold. So there's a reason that one's still in there. Okay. The next module I would then close down. So let's say all of the project managers have billings in and your staff, then you could come into accounts receivable, you post entries again. And I would go in, review the posting journal, but then you could also come in and check the inquiry called entries by batch, check the new file, click active, and make sure nothing's in there. In this example, there are stuff in the new file, so you can see what it looks like. You could research them in the posting journal, and other ways. And then you can go back through the process again and post to make sure nothing's in there. Okay. Cash management module, pretty simple. You want to double check that things posted in post entries, verify that like your bank charges and your interest income you might enter in here, that just those didn't get stuck and those posted through. It's pretty rare to have entries in here in cash management, but it can happen. The easiest way in here is just to go back and pull this post entries task up to make sure everything posted through. You can just click ranges and make sure it says no batches are in there. Okay, so that's the easiest way really to do that for cash management. And then general ledger would be the module I would close last. So this is where once you close, it'll stop entries from posting through to your general ledger. So you're going to post entries like all the other modules. You're going to review the posting journal to ensure all of them are posted through. Another way you can use this inquiry, entries by batch. Look at the new file, like Mike discussed. Those are the unposteds. And you can see in this example, there are some that are stuck. So you'll need to research from the posting journal why they're stuck. Go back through the process. You know, if you need to make changes to the entries, whatever you need to do there, and repost and make sure this is blank again. Again, we will help you, and there's knowledge base articles out there on how to fix new file problems. Okay. Once you're done, and this is all cleared up, you will close the period under the task menu. That will, depending on your settings, will roll you and close your period. So if I was in April, then I went and ran this close current period, it would automatically have check marked April for me and put me in May. And your period you're in is the top period here. If you don't have this automatically closed period in your GL settings on, it will not check mark that. Okay, just so you know. So you think you're closing when you do this, and you're not necessarily. I always go in and double check that under open close posting period, that this is check marked. You can see someone even uncheck marked December to show you an example. Okay. Also, something that someone could turn on would be allow entry to close period. So that sounds what it is. Someone could post to a check marked period that's closed. So you want to be cognizant of these two settings. Okay. Now, obviously you want to go through and make sure your AP and your AR agings match your general ledger balances, your cash management, bank rec matches GL, as a good practice. But those are the main modules and how we have found to best utilize Sage and closing down month end.
Thank you, Lisa. We can flip back over to me. There we go. What we can do now is I have a few examples that I screenshotted for you. And we Lisa referred to the posting journal. So, basically, if you're in entering accounts payable and you click finish, then there's this print screen that comes up that, where you can select to print out to a printer, that you can print to a file, or the system can automatically, code your journal to a particular file based on a setup in the system for you and automatically write it to a file. Regardless of how you do it, that printout, especially when you're posting, should be reviewed, every time. If you're not reviewing these files and then you go in 2 months down the road and realize we have 5 things in the new files, there's just more transactions in the system and it's harder to go through and go back and find what happened. Whereas if we're catching it right away, it's going to be really easy to figure it out. So this may be tough to see, but basically what I did here was created I put an accounts payable invoice in, I coded it to a project, and the month in the project, in the job costing module, was a couple months behind. So what you'll notice here in this sample is the top of the printout shows you the details of all the invoices that you entered. So if you entered 10 invoices in this batch, you're going to get a printout of 10 detailed invoices. So it does make sense to try and print it to file, save some trees, but basically the top is going to show you your entry. And then you're going to see here, and I've labeled these a little bit, but basically posting totals. Yes, it updated and posted in accounts payable. It posted one and it rejected none. It then wants to create two more types of transactions, a general ledger transaction and a job cost transaction. There's your details of these entries. And then it goes and says, all right, well, the settings in AP says automatically update general ledger, automatically update job costs. So I'm going to go and post these for you. So then it went and updated it and posted that transaction in general ledger. And you'll notice right here, it posted 2 transactions for that total and rejection 0. So rejection 0 is good. So you can review that. But then what you'll notice down here is in the job cost posting, it rejected an entry. And again, rejection doesn't mean it goes away. It just means it's stopped and stuck in the new file. So it's not part of that job-to-date cost yet.
So Mike, will that rejected entry keep popping up each time I try to post? So I don't have to review all my posting journals?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So and I'll show a sample of that in the next step where you basically go in and do what you suggested, where you hit post entries, and we'll see that entry again. Absolutely. Yep. Good question. So, and then basically you'll see here that it's rejected. Okay. So the results are basically transaction did not post in job cost. It's sitting in the new file. We need to go figure out why. And I'll just quickly go by this one. I have another example of a general ledger entry that was rejected because the period was closed. Okay. So basically, what you can do is again, what Lisa suggested earlier was you can either go take a look at an inquiry in the new files, or you can go post a transaction. So let's do the job cost one. So if I go into job cost right now, and if I go into inquiry entries by batch is one that I like to use here. We want to look at the new file. What you are hoping to get here is a message that says nothing is in there, nothing to print. That's good. But as you can see here, there are some entries that are rejected, and there's an AP batch entry, and that was the one that I did today. If I drill down, I can see the details. So that was the $1,000 that's rejected. So it's not necessarily obvious from this inquiry why it got rejected. So what you can do is I can come into here and I can just post entries. And when I do that, my system is set up to write the posting journal to a file automatically. So I'm just going to let that write, and then we'll go look at it. So I'm going to click start. The system's going to try and post. And now I'm going to go to my printouts, which is under file printouts. And it's on my other screen. Sorry about that. And the way this is set up in my system is it's going to go into the module that I'm in. So it put that printout in job cost. And then you'll notice here it is right here. The last posting is labeled by date and time. If I open this up now like Lisa said, anything that rejected for that week is going to try and post into the system again. So now in one swoop, you can also see, all right, this is beyond next month, beyond next month, beyond next month. And what that means is in job cost, for example, and I don't know how many people knew this or not, you can only post 1 month into the future. So if my current month is May right now, I can only post into June. Okay. So if you are forgetting to close these months in particular areas like a job cost, this is the most common area. basically the GL could update because the GL can post 6 months into the future, but job costs won't. So you want to keep it current. You want to roll that forward because you can still post back as long as your GL is open. And that's kind of what Lisa talked about earlier. So what I can simply do is close this month or roll it forward. It happens quick. And I could then go task post entries again. Now my current month's 6 and my next month's going to be 7. So I'm going to be able to post through 7. Hit start. It goes into a future month, doesn't go to month to date. And then I could look at that printout again or have it come off the printer. Oh, and again, it's on my other screen. And you'll see right here, the 415 one. Well, now there's less, okay? So there's less entries. Now, some of this was me playing and the entries are way off, but everything else, those entries posted, but there was 2 that were August because I'm still 2 months behind with August. But the one that we did earlier now, if I go into my entries by batch, new, it's gone. That 921's gone. It's posted through the system, okay? So, that's the theory in how to do this is you can always hit that post entries button. And if something is getting rejected and there's a reason for it, it's going to come up on that report for you to review. So that's basically is to find yourself an inquiry that you're comfortable with that runs off transaction files or a report, as long as it's off of transaction files. So usually the entries reports are good. Whenever you come into here, you want to get that newer current, then you're on transaction files. And then in the posting module, make sure that, post entries returns a value of nothing to post or nothing to print. And then you'll be in good shape. And let me get back to my screen here. And that is going to conclude our agenda today to go through. Is there any? Let me take a look and see if there's any questions. I lost my screen. Here we go. I do not see any questions. So basically, feel free to send any questions or comments. I got both mine and Lisa's email addresses up on the screen here, and we'll also be available on the Bug website as well, where you can post your comments and questions and concerns on there as well. But at this point, thank you for your time and joining us today, and hope we added some value for you.